A photo taken at a McDonald's drive-thru speaker and tweeted out on Monday is making the rounds online. It's actually gone quite viral. So now the tweet that came from the Grade 8 Dad account simply said, "Seen at our local McDonald's," and I'm going to show you that right now. "We are closed because I am quitting and I hate this job." Short and sweet. So now this is interesting because we've been having a discussion over the country as of late with, involving expiring unemployment benefits, the so-called labor shortage, which is really more of like people choosing not to work in these places. And so you also have the living wage discussion. You've got a discussion about working conditions. You've got the narrative from conservatives about people being lazy and not actually wanting to work. And so I wanted to talk about that, all that stuff together, and as well as the different responses to this. And again, this has gone viral. That tweet actually gathered about 200,000 likes in its first couple of days on the platform. So a lot of people are talking about this. So now the first question that you get is, wait a minute. So this person, why would an entire McDonald's close down from one person? That's a good question. Now, the original tweeter answered by saying, "I spoke with the staff at this McDonald's today. It turns out the sign was put there by a night shift manager who suddenly quit, and it was left up overnight." So, meaning that night shift manager was by themselves, running an entire store, and probably not getting paid very much to do so. And so, look, again, in some cases, maybe there's not enough traffic. There's not enough people going through the drive-thru. There's not enough people coming in. If it is, the night shift, maybe that makes sense to have, I would say at minimum, two people there. Because what if there's an emergency, you got to leave? What if there's something that happens and you got to, and you need that backup, you need that help? But apparently he had nothing, absolutely nothing. And again, you could also talk about maybe they did schedule two people. Maybe the other person was supposed to show up, but actually didn't. Maybe that could cause more job, dissatisfaction, people not showing up and doing the things that they're supposed to do, or just being scheduled to run an entire store by yourself. I mean, I'm not sure of the details, but it seems rather, I don't know, it seems pretty ridiculous to have one person running an entire store, an entire McDonald's. It just seems, just really kind of messed up. Now, there's more. So now the discussion also turned towards automation, right? With this one person quitting. One commenter said that thus begins the great next cycle of automation. "I give it 3 years before we start having McDonald's being able to operate without any employees at all." Okay, but who's gonna take orders? Who's gonna cook? I don't think robots are quite advanced to the point of where they can cook. But it is interesting to talk about, of course, automation. I've mentioned it before on different shows. I've had a conversation with Ben Dixon about it. I think that in an ideal world, we would have automation that would lead people to work a lot less than we do now. Okay, not having to work, or not having to work as much. Now, of course, then the obvious question from a lot of people is, how are people going to survive then if they can't work? What's going to happen? What are we going to do? We're going to have a permanent underclass of people stuck in extreme poverty because of robots took all the jobs? Well, the answer to that, of course, is you would have to change our entire economic system to one that actually encourages people to, not have to work ridiculous, crappy, menial jobs, but actually, if they do want to work, to do things like art, and music, and other things that are benefits to society, instead of having to work to eat, work to live, in the system that we're in. Okay? And so right now, I mean, again, this would involve massive changes to our economic system, our work ethic, our entire society and culture. So no, the short answer, of course, to that question, of course, is I don't see automation taking over the workplace. Not in 3 years. In fact, we already do have a lot of automated technology, but it turns out that it's A, not practical, expensive, And also, there's a lot of people that don't actually like it. So, look, anybody who, for example, you ever call a place and get a machine and have to go through all the menus? You just want to find a person. You just want to find a person. At least I know that's my experience. I'm the guy that presses 0 on the phone to try to get to a person, to confuse the robot so that it eventually sends me to an actual human being. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But yes, voice menus, that automation is terrible. At some point, a human is just going to be better at a lot of these jobs. Okay? And so I don't want to use it. I don't want to use that stuff. And here's the thing. There are a lot of people that don't want to use it. Self-checkouts is another good example. I know a lot of lefties out there. We all talk about let's not use the self-checkouts in order to preserve that person's job while we're also fighting to get them a living wage. And so, that's another thing that I think that's another important consideration and part of the conversation on automation. So, yeah. Now there's more. One other person says, underneath AI will replace all of us because we're not willing to do the job that we applied for. So now that sounds like a pretty conservative take here. That led another person to respond, I don't know. Enjoy being overworked and exploited running the entire restaurant because that's the job you applied for. Did you really apply for that? Again, there are a lot of workplaces that will basically pile on as much responsibility as they can for you. Even if they lose employees, that's okay. You end up getting more responsibility shifted onto you, but no increase in pay, just an increase in responsibilities. We've all had it happen to us. And so, as far as choice goes, I know the conservative argument is, well, you applied for that job, you have to do it, or else go find a different job. Well, again, you don't really have much of a choice in this economy. It's work or starve. And so, and even if you don't agree with that and say, well, again, if they don't like it, that's okay. You can get a different job and work somewhere else. Now, remember, someone has to do those jobs. And this kind of relates really well to what's happening right now. And back to the sign. Nobody wants to do the jobs. For one, they don't pay enough. For two, they add on too much responsibility for one person. You have regularly one person doing the jobs of sometimes 2 to 3 people. The hours are terrible, working conditions, unsafe, and you can go back to why some of these places that are meat packing plants, meat processing plants, that happen to hire a lot of immigrants, ended up being huge ground zero locations for COVID-19 outbreaks. It's because the working conditions were so bad and unsafe that you had these outbreaks. And once again, the people did not care. The people who ran the plant, owned the plant, didn't care enough about their employees to protect them. And so, as a result of all of these different factors, we have seen a lot of places that have not been able to find people to go and work in those conditions anymore. And so, of course, you have places offering bonuses. You have places offering, in some cases, higher pay, which is what we like to see. But again, I think that the culture needs to change. Now, going back to automation, if they could have replaced the people with the robots, they probably would have done so already in response to people choosing not to work at these places. So there's no reason that they can't pay people a living wage in order to work in these places, because that's what they're resorting to actually having to do now. Now, there's another person that added, I'm working a job where we have less than half the employees that corporate has deemed required for the business to function, and I am exhausted. The response, of course, was workers were already stretched to their limits for the pandemic. Of course, people are going to break down under these conditions. Another responded, yes, they don't hire enough, nor do they pay them enough. And finally, yes, that's the problem. People have figured out how to get by during the pandemic, and the idea of returning to the class of the working poor is preposterous. 100%. Regular people do not want to go back to that, and I don't blame them one bit, and we shouldn't. We talk about fast food workers a lot, and, that's, and they're an important part of this conversation, an important part of Fight for 15 as well. But when it comes to being poorly paid and poorly treated on the job, direct care workers actually, the people that are nursing home staffers, they actually might have it a little bit worse. And that's not to pit those two groups against each other. They should be working together to fight for better working conditions and higher pay. It's just that, some of those direct care workers get ignored. And so let me give you an example of some of the stuff that they end up doing as well. These direct care workers get paid $10 an hour to feed, clothe, shower, change, administer medications sometimes. A lot of times it's stuff that you and I couldn't imagine doing. Enemas, suppositories, real crappy work. No pun intended. You do this and they do this, and they get no respect for it. You have people lifting sometimes 250-pound quadriplegic people that end up with massive back pain and all that different stuff. Bodily injuries, people wear out really, really fast doing that round-the-clock care, oftentimes without enough people to back them up, without enough people in those homes to be able to do those things on time and take care of people the way that they deserve to be taken care of. And as a result, again, they don't really get a whole lot. No health insurance, no benefits, real low pay, always on call, having to work weekends, holidays. It's bad. And I know because I have personal experience. I mean, not myself, but someone very, very close to me did all that work. And she's worked in that field for many, many years. She just started doing something else, medical assistant work. And she says, I can't go back. I can't go back. I will never go back to that. It's horrible. Because in her career now, outside of that, she actually does have respect. She's paid well, she's valued. And that's what people working in these so-called low-skilled jobs don't have. They don't get that respect. And they should. They absolutely should. Every job, every person that does a job needs to be respected. Because they are all necessary. But instead, they get terrible pay, no respect, no benefits, little advancement, and the employees wonder why people leave. Workers ain't lazy. They're just tired of getting crushed by corporations, by capitalists, by investors. And instead of blaming them, the workers, we should be demanding a living wage, better pay, better working conditions, and the ability to more easily unionize the workplace. We're not asking for much here. We're not asking for the socialist revolution to seize the means of production. We're just right now asking for the bare basics of humanity. Fair pay for fair work. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.